Hello, friends. Welcome to On the Couch program. We are super excited that you'll be joining us. On the Couch is going to be aired every Friday evening at 7 p.m. on our YouTube channel. This program will be focused on answering questions around really difficult topics of finance, family dynamics, parenting, dating, and divorce. So if any of these topics are affecting anyone that you care about or even yourself, please tune in for some biblical answers. We would love to hear from you as well on your own questions, so please send that in to our email address, which will be located in the details below. Thanks so much. We look forward to hearing from you.
Financial problems, troubled family relationships, unplanned pregnancy, broken marriage, delinquent children, or overwhelming grief. Are you burdened by the care of life? Are you feeling hopeless? Friend, whatever you are going through, whatever questions you may have, God has the answers. We invite you to join us on the couch, a Bible-based program that will give you insight into what the Bible says about these critical issues of life. We present to you On the Couch, finding hope in the midst of a crisis.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to another On the Couch program. We are glad that you could join us again this evening. And we hope you have been blessed by each of these presentations that we have been having on Friday evening. I hope you're spreading the word to your friends, your family members about On the Couch. And remember, we want to hear from you. So write to us, onthecouchministry@gmail.com. Send in your questions, send in your comments, send in your concern, and we'll be sure to address them as we go along. This evening, we are going to be discussing family dynamics with special emphasis on the whole matter of addiction. Yes, you heard me right, addiction. And we have a special guest on the couch. He's Dr. Colin King. Dr. King, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for the invitation and for the privilege of being here and having the opportunity to share with the listening audience.
Yes, we are glad that you have consented to be with us, Dr. King. And we look forward to exciting time as we go through the next 60 minutes on the couch. Dr. King, tell us a little about yourself.
Certainly. So I'm originally from South America, and I have degrees, bachelor's degrees in theology, as well as in business administration, and master's degree from Andrews University in Barron Springs, Michigan, in counseling psychology, and a PhD from Wayne State, 1998. And I have a wife and 2 adult children, and by training, I'm a clinical psychologist, and I've spent the last 20 plus years dealing with various disorders. So be it mental health, substance abuse, and more recently, traumatic brain injury, and also skilled in treating various families and individuals.
Okay. So, audience, you hear it. Dr. King is clinically qualified to deal with our subject this evening. And I may also say spiritually qualified because he's a born-again child of God. So, Dr. King, addiction. This is really something that plague families, plague individual, in not just in our 21st century, but even prior to. And many individuals' lives have been wrecked on the road of life, all because of addiction. In your opening statement, what do you have to share with our viewers this evening as it relates to addiction in general? I know we're going to deal with specifics, but in general right now.
Yeah, so I'm also a brain scientist, a brain researcher, because I work in the field of traumatic brain injury. I've done hundreds of assessments. I've had a chance to look at a human brain. In fact, I have a model here of the human brain. I'm sure you can certainly see this. So this is a schematic of the human brain. So just as a foundation for our discussion, we know that the brain has about 100 billion neurons and 1 trillion connections, right? More connections than the stars in the universe. And the brain has the consistency of jello or soft butter or a raw egg. That is the consistency of the brain. And it's housed in a hard shell called the skull. And it's very susceptible to injury, right? So if you were to drill a hole at the top of this person's brain and go through this person's right ear or left ear, and those 2 points intersect, there's an area in the brain called the amygdala, and it's housed in the limbic system. That is what is known as the brain's reward system, as the brain pleasure system. So that when you eat sugar or ice cream or chocolate, or you drink something that you really like, this reward system captures that memory. Or when you see a beautiful sunset, or a beautiful lady, or a handsome young man, or whatever it is, the brain reward system captures that information, right? And so over time, once you input those pleasurable experiences from wherever, because pleasurable experiences can come from different sources.
Yes.
Right? They can come from sex, can come from music, can come from drug. Anything that generates excitement goes into the brain reward system, and the brain remembers.
Okay.
So even when you no longer want to engage in whatever that activity is, the brain remembers. And the brain kind of guides you towards that activity. So addiction is really a function of the brain. It's a brain disease. That's my general introductory remarks about their brain.
You know, as you explain and define that for us, I couldn't help but going back to Psalm 139, where David said, "We are fearfully and wonderfully made. We are a masterpiece."
Yeah, in fact, when you go to the book of Genesis, when God created man, and Adam looked at Eve, and Adam said that she was beautiful, right? That memory was captured in his brain reward system. When Eve saw the fruit, whatever that fruit was, and she tasted it, if you read the text again, you will see that she said it was pleasing to the eye.
Yes.
And wonderful to the taste, right? So that again is the brain reward system saying, I like that, I like that, I like that. And so if we don't monitor what goes into the brain reward system, we're essentially setting ourselves up for a disease that we may not be able to control.
Okay. Thank you. So, how do you think I should treat this challenge? My spouse is an alcoholic, addicted to it, or he or she is on drugs. What is your recommendation for those who are going through this challenge?
Well, the first thing we have to do is to understand what's going on, right? We first of all need to know to understand. It's just like if you go to the doctor, if you have a diagnosis of cancer, right? The doctors are going to run tests to kind of figure out what's going on with you, because in the absence of that, they're just guessing. So if your spouse or a loved one is addicted to certain substances, you've got to try to find out what's going on with the person to be able to help, right? So let me say this, and this is how insidious addiction is. 10 people can walk into a bar. 10 of them can pick up alcohol and drink. And for whatever reason, between 1 and 2 persons may become addicted to that substance, and the other 8 or 7 may never become addicted to that substance. We don't know why. We don't know why some people are addicted to certain substances and others are not addicted to certain substances, but it's just a given. So people need to understand, first of all, that addiction is not a function of willpower, right? It's a brain disease that starts in the brain. And once we understand that, then we need to find a solution that will address the issue. Now, I'm not saying that other things are not going to help, prayer, meditation, treatment. For some people, it may be medication to assist with that process. So we first of all have to find out, what is this person addicted to? What is the pattern of addiction? Then before we can try to figure out what type of treatment we can provide to that person. And for some people who are in recovery, they will probably be in recovery for the rest of their lives. And you've heard people say, hey, I'm alcoholic and I've been clean and sober for 40 years. There's a reason why they say that. Because as soon as they pick up the next drink, there they go again.
Okay. Wow. Yes, I'm learning.
And it's just like sin. It's just like sin, right? We've been affected by sin. So we're always going to be sinners. Even when you're not sinning, even when you're preaching in the pulpit, you're still a sinner and you still need grace.
Yeah.
Right? Because your DNA is impacted by sin. Well, with addiction, it's the exact same thing.
Yes, yes. So what do we say to those persons who their loved one has become addicted to whatever substance or whatever lifestyle, and they are saying, I need to take such a one to the church, to the prayer band, to pray for him or her so that they could overcome that addiction? Watching us this evening, there are people who believes that.
Sure.
And what is your advice for them?
Yeah, so there certainly is a place for prayer. There certainly is a place for support. God can heal anyone, right? God is all powerful. We know that. However, God does not heal everyone, which is the reason why some people die from cancer or from certain addiction. He just doesn't heal everyone, but he certainly has the power to. So because he doesn't heal people doesn't mean that he's not able to. So therefore, we now need to try to come up with a strategy. How can we provide assistance to that person? So yes, taking the person to the church is helpful. Prayer is helpful. However, in a number of cases, because addiction is a brain disease, we need professional help. Let me give you an example. Let's say someone who's addicted to alcohol. Alcohol is a powerful drug, right? Alcohol, it has the effect of a benzodiazepine, right? And it depresses the central nervous system, so it relaxes us, which is why sometimes you see when people drink, They say all kinds of things that they will never say when they're sober, right? Because their system is relaxed, and it's for some it's a great feeling. It's a great feeling, and some people just get addicted to feeling that way, right? The problem is sometimes that the more they try to get out, is the worse it becomes. In fact, a part of my job is to do interventions with individuals and with families. And I have traveled through all parts of the country to take people to treatment centers. Right? There's some people, they're going to need to be in a secured setting while they detox from the substance.
Yeah.
And they need to be in a setting under the care of a professional. Like if someone who is addicted to alcohol just tries to stop, there's a great likelihood that they can begin to have seizures and die. That's how powerful that drug is. And so that's why it's important to seek professional help. In some cases, the person may need to be on medication to help with the withdrawal symptoms, because the withdrawal symptoms are painful. Seeing someone coming off withdrawals from a benzo or opioid like heroin, it's like having a bad case of COVID, right? So think about the headache, and think about the nausea, and think about the vomiting, and think about the sweating, and think about feeling like if you're going to pass out and the shaking. That's how it feels sometimes when the person is withdrawing, which is the reason why people continue to use, because once they begin to feel those symptoms, they do not want to experience those symptoms. If you ever had a bad case of the flu, you will do everything to not have the flu. So when someone is withdrawing from the substances, when they start to feel those terrible side effects, that's why they have to take more of the substance and more of the substance now, just to feel normal. Not even to get high anymore, but just to feel normal. And so that's why sometimes you need the assistance of a professional person to kind of guide the person through. So it's not just a matter of willpower.
Okay. And I hope those who are watching us this evening will take note of that. It is good that you can take that person to get prayer.
Absolutely.
But you also need to seek professional help for that person. And I heard a speaker said recently that God will not do for man what man needs to do for himself.
Correct.
So we have to go beyond. Prayer is powerful. And as Dr. King rightly said, God can heal any and everybody.
Correct.
But we also need to recognize that there are times when the Lord say, you need to act, you need to do this, or you need to do that.
Exactly.
There are many families this evening that are mourning, in turmoil, because a son, a daughter has become addicted to drugs, and they have been caught up in it, and it has become devastating for the family, for the parents. Can you speak to these parents, give them some hope and some advice this evening as it relates to what they're going through?
Yeah, I want to say that they are not alone, right? They are not alone. Addiction affects the lives of maybe 1 in 10 individuals. And if you, for instance, in the US, if you look at various forms of addiction, there's probably somewhere in the vicinity of 60 to 75 million people who may have a diagnosis of substance addiction, right? Whether it's alcohol, whether it's marijuana, opioid, or some type of a stimulant.
Mhm.
So what I would say to the family is that you are not alone. There are others who are going through the exact same situation, some of them even worse. Some people have lost children and or loved ones due to the person overdosing and dying or committing suicide because of the helplessness. And so I would say to them, you are not alone. I would also say to the church that the church should be a hospital for these people.
Yeah.
Quite often, when these people come to church, what they hear is condemnation. Right?
Mhm.
What they hear is fire and brimstone and condemnation. Now, can you imagine if you're diabetic, right? And every time you come to church, the preacher's raining fire and brimstone on you because you're diabetic.
Yes.
So you're really taking hope away from that person. So what I want to say to them is there is hope. There is help that is available. Our church does not do a great job in terms of treating addiction because we think that, well, because we're Adventist or we're Christians, then we're not supposed to be addicts. We're
Mm.
not supposed to
Yeah.
be addicts because we're Adventists or because we are Christians. Now, if you go back to how we started, that addiction is a brain disease, right? And addiction has nothing to do with if you're Seventh-day Adventist or not. Once you have a brain, you are a candidate, right? And we don't know what we're going to be addicted to, right? You have no idea what you're going to be addicted to until you try it, right? And so whether it's pornography, whether it's alcohol, whether it's prescription medication, whether it's pain medication, you have no idea what this reward system is going to like. And so we need to have a sense of empathy, right? And concern and support as opposed to taking the approach of raining fire and brimstone. So to the family and other family members, I would say there is hope, take courage, do not give up, keep praying, but try to find professional help for that person.
Okay. Yes. So true. You mentioned a little while ago about pornography, and I want to go there because there are some people who has been faced with this challenge. Their spouse is addicted to pornography. How do you recommend that they handle it? Should they get a divorce, or is there some way to help that person
So
out of this addiction?
so again, it comes back to understanding that old process of addiction, right? I keep coming back to the brain because
Yes.
here is where it starts, right? And again, the brain likes what the brain likes, right?
Yeah.
We don't get to choose our addiction. We don't get to choose. The brain chooses for us. Once we start it, right? Once we put it in the brain said, can you give me some more, please? And so for that person, I would certainly explain to them that this person has made a choice to use a substance or to engage in pornography, not understanding what the ramifications could be. So once they're trapped in that system, condemnation is not going to work.
Mm-hmm.
Yelling and screaming is not going to work. The approach that we have to take is to treat the person as if the person is sick because the person is sick. And when you're sick, you need help. So the approach should be, how can I provide you help? And there's various types of help that are available. We don't have time to go into counseling and the different counseling strategies can be used. There is coaching, life coaching. there's different strategies. There's different cognitive strategies that one can use in terms of stopping their thoughts and moving on to something else. And let me just give you a very quick, simple cognitive technique that we teach people, right? So let's say, for instance, someone who's addicted to pornography, right? It's rewarding to the brain system, but they want to quit. So we said to them, start practicing using your automatic stop sign. What is the automatic stop sign? It's when these thoughts come, because the thoughts usually come before the action, right? So when the thoughts come, just imagine that you're approaching a stop sign and say to yourself, stop. Once you do that now, you need to substitute new, fresh thoughts to reprogram your brain. And so those new, fresh thoughts could be scriptures. It could be affirmation. It could be prayer. It could be anything that is positive. So in other words, what you're doing now, you are causing your brain to rewire, to think differently, because the brain is just like a muscle, right? If you want biceps and triceps, you go in the gym and you exercise.
Yeah.
You can't sit on the couch and eat potato chips every day. I promise you get big biceps and triceps. You have to go in the gym and exercise. That's a muscle that you can change. Well, the brain is the same way. It's comprised of muscles. And so you now will have to be willing to create different pathways in the brain and teach the brain different ways of being rewarded by different things, not just this thing.
Okay. I hear you say that you cannot choose your addiction.
Correct.
But there are those out there who are saying it is based on my genes, it's genetic, or the environment that I was grown up in, has led me to this. Is there anything like that to stand on?
Yeah, so for instance, diabetes, right? We have some people who were born with who will acquire type 1 diabetes. Some of them, they were born with it, or at an early age, like 2 or 3, they become diabetic.
Yeah.
Right? The same thing with heart disease, right? The same thing with a number of illnesses. Well, addiction is no different, right? Our DNA, because of sin, sin has taken a tremendous toll on the human race. So because of sin, you have certain predispositions that you may not even be aware of. And that's what I mean by you don't get to choose. Now, what we don't know is what we're going to be addicted to until we try it, right? So there may be 10 things, there may be alcohol, there may be cigarette, there may be coffee, there may be sweet, there may be porn, there may be so many things in a line. You don't know which one of those your brain is going to like, right? And so this is why I'm saying, that's what I mean by you don't get to choose your addiction, the brain does.
Okay.
And so all the more reasons why, even though we don't know what we can be addicted to, it is important to try to engage in wholesome activities.
Yeah.
Because the activities that are not wholesome, we can be trapped once we try any one of them.
And therefore, if I may add, it is very, very important that we choose wisely the circle that we hang around, for want of a better term, the circle that we hang around, because sometimes that can dictate as to what we love, which can eventually lead to addiction. Am I right?
Absolutely, absolutely. Your friends, they really influence what you do, which is why, that old saying, show me your company,
Yeah.
I will tell you who you
Yes.
are. That is so true, right? Because we may not even like a certain activity, but if we hang around people who engage in those activities, whatever they are, over time, the brain can be trained to like those activities. All right. And so that's why it's important that we kind of watch our peer group.
Yeah.
And it's not enough to say, oh, that's not my thing. I'm just here hanging out, but that's not my thing. Well, guess what? It can become your thing over time. It is absolutely possible.
Yes. We tend to look down on people that are addicted to drugs, different types of drugs, that are addicted to sex, that are addicted to alcohol. But we tend to gloss over those that are plagued, I may say, by bulimia or anorexia. And we do not put this under the same umbrella. But eating disorder can also be an addiction. How do you recommend to those that are plagued by these disorders? How do you recommend that they treat this?
So what I say to people is, and this is a saying that we use, right? A drug is a drug is a drug is a drug, right? It doesn't matter what it is. In fact, one of the biggest drugs, one of the most powerful drugs on earth, most of us are addicted to, right? And that is sugar.
Yeah.
Right? That is sugar, right? Most of us are addicted to sugar. And if for anyone who tells me that they're not, then what I say to them is, well, then try going 30 days without sugar. You may literally go crazy. Just try going 30 days without sugar, because almost everything that we eat has sugar. Matter of fact, even water, when you look at the label, they're adding sugar to water, right? Rice, flour, carbs break down into sugar,
Yeah.
right? So we don't have to eat sugar directly, but most things break down into fruits.
Yes. Yes.
Bananas are high in sugar, right? Apples are high in sugar. Mangoes are high.
Yeah.
You choose papaya are high in sugar, right? And you may argue, well, it's wholesome sugar, it's in a fruit. That is true. The point of the matter that I am making is that sugar is one of the biggest drugs. And if you're diabetic, for instance, and you eat a lot of mangoes, you're going to drive your A1C way up there. All right. So it's not, so to answer your question, it's not good enough for me to look down on someone who is high in crack, while at the same time, I'm high in sugar. All right. It may have different consequences, but nevertheless, a drug is a drug is a drug is a drug.
Yes.
Matter of fact, more people die from complications of diabetes than from crack cocaine.
Wow. Wow.
There are a lot of good Christians who are obese and who are diabetic. A lot of good Christians.
Yes. Some people are very, very emotional. I mean, emotion is a part of us, yes. But there are some that are really very emotional. Is it possible for somebody to be addicted to emotional abuse?
Yes, yes. That cycle of abuse could be something, could be very addictive, because there is a cycle, right? You have the happy moments, then you have the abuse, whatever it is, physical, verbal, sexual, whatever it is, and then you have the remorse, and then you go back into makeup, and then there's the good times, and then it follows that cycle. And so there are some people who actually, I don't want to say enjoy, but they're so accustomed to that cycle, and they're so addicted to that cycle that it's hard to take them out of that cycle. It's very difficult to break that cycle, which explains why people go back time and time again into abusive relationships, because that's what they know. That's what they're accustomed to. That's what they know. That's their comfort zone. And what they know is better than the unknown. And so that's why they stay there. So you can absolutely get addicted to that.
So they're loving it then, in other words.
Well, it's not necessarily that they're loving it, is that it's comforting knowing what you know. It's kind of like when, like when some people travel overseas, right? They see a Burger King. I'm like, I know that. I know that place. And you may not even like the food, but at least it is a safe place.
Yeah.
It is better than what you don't know.
Yes, I get it. I get it. And I hope our viewers got it too. There are also some families that are hurting because their loved one is addicted. They have tried to help. They have gotten help for that loved one. But every time that person is free or seems to is getting over this addiction, they go right back to it. And this is frustrating family members and causing even marriages and families to become broken. What? Should we have patience with these people? Should we cut them off? Or should we keep trying?
So, once we understand that in quite a lot of cases, addiction is a lifetime disease, right? I'm going to use the example again of being diabetic. When you're diabetic, quite often that could be, it's not always, but it could be a lifetime condition. So how do you treat it? You have to exercise, you have to watch your diet, and in some cases when their pancreas is shot, it doesn't matter how much they exercise, it doesn't matter how much they diet, they're still going to need some type of insulin, right? So if you view an addiction in the same manner, you may be, depending on whatever it is, you may be in recovery for the rest of your life. You can live a productive life while still being in recovery. And no one knows how long you're going to be battling a particular addiction. The Bible has a lot of stories and instances. Mary, Jesus had to exorcise demons from Mary. Ellen White says 7 times. And 7 times she went back into the same sin, which some say was addiction, prostitution, right? 7 times. Right. So we don't get to choose the number of times. We get to choose our interventions and what we do. And in some cases, it's a lifetime of helping, unfortunately. But that's just the nature of the disease. And some people they're able to recover and they're able to live a productive life, and that issue doesn't bother them anymore.
Okay. Okay. So what are your recommendations? Or can you recommend some of the programs that people who are going through or have family members going through these different addictions, they can tap into, they can recommend so that they can help their family members, whether it be alcohol, drug addiction, sexual promiscuity? What are some of the places that you would recommend?
So I can tell you what I would love to see, and then I can tell you what is available. So here's what I would love to see. I would love to see each church has its own or has a network of support systems, like support groups. Support groups are very important, right? There's a number of Adventist mental health specialists, and there is no reason why we cannot build a network of Adventist professionals who can provide service to various church members, and provide and kind of teach members how to form support groups at their individual churches and to train families how to provide assistance. Some churches have those resources available, but not all churches do. So now, because the church does not have the resource available, we now have to look outside of the church, like community mental health centers, to get the type of help. And one of the caution I will give to church members is to understand that there is no shame in going outside to get help. There is no shame, because if the church doesn't have it, if you don't have it, then you've got to go somewhere to get it. And it's not a bad reflection on you. It's not because you don't have faith, or it's not because you don't believe in God, or you don't believe in Jesus. It has nothing to do with that. It's that we are humans. We have been infected by this disease called sin. And as a result of that, we have all of these ailments. I mean, the Bible says it, right?
Yeah.
I'm not saying anything that you don't know.
That's right.
And the church may not have all of the answers or solutions. So we may have to go outside quite often to get help.
Yes. And I like that recommendation, because the Seventh-day Adventist Church is a worldwide body. And therefore, it would be good if we could bring these professionals together, from the leadership down, to organize such a thing, not just to help our church members, but also to help our community. It will go a far way in helping to take care of some of the needs that some of these communities that the churches within have. And because of lack of resources, not able to offer these services to our community at large. So yes, and I am sure that for those who are listening, and it can be also that districts can come together in a certain geographical area to look at this, how they can help, because families are suffering and many turn to the church. And when they turn to the church should be able to offer help. Because the gospel is one thing, but the social gospel is vital in enhancing the word of God.
Absolutely. And we haven't spoken about COVID-19 and the impact that it is having on people's mental health, right? So what has happened during COVID-19 is, isolation, because we have to socially distance, right?
Yeah.
In order to control the virus, right? So we have certain restrictions. In a number of states, there is no congregational attendance. So you can't go to a physical building. You have to worship online. You can't get together and sing. You cannot get together and have social activities. So you're isolated. And then some people have lost their jobs.
Yes.
Some people have become ill, and some people have lost loved ones. So we're actually right now in crisis mode. And so if before COVID, we had all of these problems that we're talking about, addiction and abuse and so on and so forth, COVID now has intensified all of that, because now we really don't have a good, strong support system. We're essentially fighting a virus on our own the best way we can. So we really need to pool our resources together and try to help. Like right now, you're in Texas, I'm in Michigan. This is a great example of pooling your resources together.
Yeah. Yeah.
And presenting a package that hopefully will help people.
It is ironic that you mentioned COVID, because this program On the Couch got its birth from the COVID virus.
Absolutely.
We were listening to the radio, and it was stating that families were running into each other, and it was developing in conflict in the family.
Correct.
And there seems not to be an avenue to express themselves and to answer their question, because COVID has caused them to be more than the normal. Hence, On the Couch was born so as to help them to get through by answering some of these questions, and how it is better to bond together as a family than to separate from each other with the conflicts that they often have.
Yeah, we've seen an escalation in physical aggression during this time of COVID. We've seen an escalation in substance abuse during this time of COVID. We've seen spikes in suicide during this time of COVID, because your activities are restricted, and it's almost being kind of trapped in a space with people that you like, but after a while you need some type of relief.
Yes.
But there is no place to go to find that relief. You can't go on vacation. Please, they're discouraging you from traveling. A lot of the kids are doing distance learning. The parents who can afford it are working from home. So you literally are going crazy in your own space. And it doesn't seem to be any type of relief. And so that explains the escalation in violence, in aggression, in separation, in anxiety, and suicide, and so on and so forth.
Yes. In your experience as a counselor and a psychologist, can you share with our viewers experiences that you have had with those who have been addicted? The good stories, the ones that end with and they lived happily ever after. And also for those who are not willing to, accept the advice given and the guidance given, what has become of them? What's the history for them? Just briefly, give us one or two examples or of your experiences in that regard?
Yeah, sure. I coach a fair amount of people. I didn't say counsel, I coach, which is kind of different. Fair amount of people. I worked with a young man. I've been working with him now about 3 years now. When his parents brought him to me or brought me to him, he was hooked on heroin and heavy IV user, just a wreck, just spending every penny on drugs, just barely holding on to his job and clearly not doing well. This is someone who was really teetering and probably overdosed a few times, but was lucky enough to survive. And so one of the things we had to do was to get him out of that environment. We had to get him out of that environment into a sober place. And some type of addiction, you have to physically remove the person from that environment into a place where the drugs are not available.
Yeah.
Right? So that gives their body a chance to dry out. But it has to be in a place that is sort of supervised by professionals, because as I said initially, in the absence of that, they can actually have seizures and die. Right? In the case of certain substances.
Yeah.
So we got him after a place where he dried out. And then after 2 months, I actually had to take him out of state. And the reason for that is that we had to get him away from his colleagues, from his peer group, from his stomping ground, right? We had to get him away with and give his brain a chance to form new reward systems. So that's what we did. Took him to a program that had counseling, individual counseling, that had group counseling, that focused on vocational work, vocational activities, focus on money management, and all of those activities of daily living, all of those skills that were decimated by their substance. We got him a job, and he's been clean and sober now for the last 3 years. He's been clean and sober. He has to do drug testing on a random basis, and that's how we know that he's clean and sober, because we test a couple of times a week. Now he is actually driving. He's back driving. He has, as I mentioned, a 3-year work record. Now he's managing his money. Now he's living semi-independently and clean and sober. But it has been a lot of work. So there is hope. There is hope. But with hope comes a lot of work and willingness kind of separate from your environment. Some people are able to function in that environment, but for others, there's got to be like a physical separation whereby the drug or whatever it is no longer accessible to them. And give your brain a chance to find new pathways.
Okay. You mentioned that there's a difference, and capitalizing on that, there is a difference between coaching and counseling. What's the difference?
So counseling is having more of a therapeutic relationship with someone, where there's certain rules and guidelines and certain activities. And coaching is more like for instance, Tiger Woods is in my opinion, one of the greatest golfers, right? But even though he's won several majors at various points in his life, he still had a coach. He had a coach who would look at his swing pattern and say, well, your plane is too flat, or your plane is too high, or you need to finish that swing, or you need to minute. So the coach is someone who can look at what you're doing and give you hints and tips and so on. You don't have to take it. But if you do, more than likely you will get better. So you know, there's family coaches, there's business, you know, someone who is running a business and maybe does not have the right financial attitude and strategies. A coach can come in and, you know, try this and try that. Well, it's the same thing with individuals and family, providing them strategies for being better.
Okay. Okay. Do you think there is a time when family members, loved one, should walk away from one who is addicted?
Well, it depends on what you mean by walking away, right? So what I usually tell people is that you have to establish what I call boundaries, right? And let me give you an example. If the person who is addicted is always coming to you for money, and you're constantly providing them money, then you may be enabling them in their addiction. You have to put up boundaries, which simply says, no, I'm not going to give you money. I'm going to give you the skills so that you can get your own money. You know, if you want me to help you work on your resume, I can pay someone to work on your resume so that you have an updated resume. If you want to practice your interviewing skills, I can assist you with that. But the person has to build up boundaries so that they are not always sucked into rescuing the person. And a lot of times we fall prey to rescuing people.
Okay.
Washing our hands and walking away never really helps, right? It's pointless to do that. We just have to find different ways of helping.
Okay. As our discussion come to an end, Dr. King, does God forgive those who are addicted? Is there hope for them? There are persons watching us this evening that are not Christians, but there are many who are. Is there hope for my loved one who is addicted as it relates to being forgiven for all that he or she would have done, taking the family through, the tears, they up all night, you name it? Where is God in all of this? Would he ever forgive?
Well, then you can ask the same question. Does God forgive the person who is diabetic? Right? who knows that they're diabetic, but they're still eating the foods that are not good for them, right? Does God forgive the obese person who is not exercising daily? Right? Does God forgive the person who has high blood pressure, who has no business eating salt, who should have eliminated salt from their diet years ago, but never did, and now the medical bills are skyrocketing? Does God forgive that person? So if the answer is yes, then what makes you think that you are better than the person who also has a brain disease? Of course, God is going to forgive that person, because but for the grace of God, there go I. And remember, I said, an addiction is an addiction is an addiction. Does God forgive the person who's constantly eating and overeating? I think so. So does God forgive the addict? I think so.
Thank you. There is hope, even for those in our family. Or if you might be the person who is addicted this evening, there is hope. And God offers grace. And that's the key. He offers grace. And therefore, because he offers grace, there is hope. Dr. King, what is your last word to us this evening who are viewing this program? They may have imbibe what may have been discussed here. Nonetheless, they're saying, well, yes, doctor, I hear you, but it's easier said than done. Give us your last word.
Yeah, sure. So my last words are that there is hope. We serve a caring God. First of all, we don't have to worry about whether or not God is going to forgive us. He is going to forgive us. It depends on if we want to accept that forgiveness. So the issue is not with God, the issue is with us, right? Whether or not we choose to accept that forgiveness. And then to the families who are struggling with loved ones, I want to say also that there is hope. Help is available. You've got to reach out outside of the church sometime. You've got to find the help. Don't give up. Don't wash your hands and walk away, thinking that by doing that, somehow the person is going to come to their senses. They may not, all right? And you may be the person's only hope. So my closing thoughts are that don't give up on anyone. Keep them in your prayers. Reach out for help, and God will make a way because He always has.
Dr. King, I want to thank you. On behalf of the Access Church, the Fil-Am Church here in Houston, I want to thank you for coming to share with us. We have been blessed by the recommendations, the answers that you have given. And we hope and pray that those who are watching us this evening have also been blessed. Let me say to our audience, On the Couch is here for you. Write to us, onthecouchministry@gmail.com. Send in your questions. Send in your comments. We want to hear from you. And I close out this evening by saying what Dr. King said at the start. Addiction is a brain disease. I hope I said it right.
Yeah.
And therefore, you can get help for your loved one. You can get help for yourself. And don't forget, no matter what the sin is, God got the answer. For every bucket of sin, there is a barrel of grace. We cannot out-sin God's grace. As you go, as we close, may the God of heaven bless us. And it is my prayer that your family life will be better from what we have presented here on the couch. God bless you. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Hello, friends. We are super excited that you have been able to be a part of the On the Couch program. I'm sure that a lot of you are really enjoying this and maybe even have other questions that are outside of this program. We would love to help you through that and point you in the direction of what the Bible says about those things. If you have any other questions or interest on what this is all about, please look into the details below on Access, which is a wonderful community. It's a church located in Sugar Land who can help you through this. If you want to know more about that, just check out the link. And also, please hit the like button.